The Jedi Code, the Prime Directive. To the casual observer, they seem like ancient philosophies, ideals designated to restrain power and preserve peace. But dig deeper, and you'll find something else. The Jedi Code was born in the ashes of war, not peace, but fire. Jedi Masters, once generals, saw their order nearly destroyed, and to prevent it from happening again, they rewrote who they were. Emotion became dangerous. Love became a weakness. They taught that fear led to anger, anger to hate, and hate to suffering. But in their fear of feeling, they forgot how to listen. They called it clarity, but it was blindness. And Anakin Skywalker fell into that silence. The Prime Directive, the Federation's sacred law, came from failure, from the chaos of first contact gone wrong. Worlds destabilized, civilizations collapsed, all because Starfleet tried to help, and help too much. In their earliest days, Starfleet left behind chaos, uplifted societies that couldn't bear the weight of Federation technology. They meant well, but meaning well doesn't save a civilization. So they wrote the Directive, not as guidance, but as an apology. They stopped. They stepped back. They wrote a rule. Rarely, if ever, interfere, no matter the cost. These codes weren't born from wisdom. They were born from trauma. They were survival strategies, written into law. And like all systems built in fear, they were destined to be worshipped, without question, without mercy. Eventually, the law became more important than the people it was written to protect. Jedi who questioned the code were exiled. Officers who broke the directive were tried. And soon, obedience became virtue, even when it cost lives. When the rules become sacred, compassion becomes treason. Codes don't kill, but they can let people die. And in the hand of institutions afraid to question themselves, they become weapons. Not of action, but of silence. The Jedi claimed to be guardians of peace, but when the Clone Wars began, they became generals. They followed the code, they obeyed the Republic, and when corruption spread through the very system they served, they stood still. Obi-Wan Kenobi, a man of principle, knew Anakin was falling, but the code told him not to intervene, so he didn't, and the galaxy burned. When Ahsoka Tano was framed for terrorism, the Jedi Council doubted her. They stripped her of her rank. They handed her over to the military courts. And they didn't listen when Anakin told them they were wrong. Not until it was too late. They knew the evidence was weak. They knew she had served them with loyalty. But the code told them not to interfere, to trust the system. So they watched and waited. And when the truth finally came out, they offered her a quiet apology, an invitation to return. She refused, not because she hated them, but because when she needed the Jedi the most, they chose the code over her. Starfleet tells itself it's different, that the Prime Directive preserves life. But when worlds crumble from natural disasters, when cultures fall to war or disease, the Directive demands restraint. In Homeward, Captain Picard allows a civilization to die, because saving them would violate the law. In Pen Pals, children cry out for help, and Starfleet debates whether answering is an ethical breach. The Prime Directive doesn't say, help carefully. It says, rarely help, and only when the culture can't see you coming. The result is the same. People die, not from cruelty, but from obedience. Starfleet calls it non-interference. The Jedi call it detachment. But to the dying, it all looks the same. Inaction is still a choice. Every code has its rebels. Every system, its defectors. Not all of them were traitors. Some were just awake. Jedi were taught to let go, to detach, to trust in the will of the Force. But Qui-Gon Jinn didn't follow the Council blindly. He questioned their judgment. He believed in Anakin Skywalker and intended to train him without their approval. He was prepared to defy them, but he died before he had to. And so the task fell to Obi-Wan, a by-the-book Jedi, who adopted Qui-Gon's rebellious spirit when it mattered most. Some say Qui-Gon was reckless. Others call him the last true Jedi. Ahsoka Tano walked away from the Jedi Order, but not from doing what was right. She chose to help others, even when it meant standing alone. And in the darkest hour, when the clones turned on the Jedi, she tried to spare them. She refused to treat them as enemies. She saved Rex. She wanted to give the others every chance. But in the end, the ship went down, and most of them died. She mourned them, not as soldiers, but as friends. Because for Ahsoka, morality wasn't written in a code. It was a choice made in the moment. Obi-Wan Kenobi broke the code too. He formed attachments. He loved. And when Anakin began to fall, he tried to save him 3 times. As a master, as a brother, as a friend. He failed. The code couldn't save Anakin, and neither could Obi-Wan. So in the end, he had to become something more than the code. He had to become the one who would help stop him. James T. Kirk violated the Prime Directive so many times. Starfleet practically rewrote it around him. When civilizations faced extinction, he didn't consult a panel, he acted. He cheated death, broke protocol, rewrote fate. Because some lives are worth breaking the rules for. Benjamin Sisko made moral compromises, but he never hid behind policy. When the Dominion threatened the Alpha Quadrant, he didn't let idealism blind him. He used spies. He lied. He acted. And Starfleet won the war because he did. But it changed him. Sisko still believed in the dream, but not the ritual. He held on to the spirit of the Prime Directive, but he would never again follow it to the letter. These were the heretics, the ones who bent the rules and saved lives. Not because they stopped believing in their ideals, but because they refused to be enslaved by them. The Jedi Code forbade attachment. The Prime Directive forbade interference. Both were meant to preserve peace, but peace isn't always passive, and sometimes obedience becomes complicity. In Insurrection, Starfleet agrees to relocate a peaceful society, not because it's right, but because it's efficient. In Into Darkness, the directive is broken to save a world, and the punishment isn't moral, it's procedural. The lesson isn't do the right thing, it's don't get caught. The Jedi Code told Anakin not to fear loss, not to grieve, not to love. So he hid those feelings, unless they became something darker. And when he broke the code, the Order blamed him, not the system. These codes were too strict to live by, too brittle to adapt. The good actors were shackled by them, the bad actors found excuses to ignore them. And the people who needed help were forgotten in the middle. The Jedi thought detachment was strength, but it becomes blindness. Starfleet thought non-interference was compassion, but it became abandonment. When morality becomes procedure, you don't need villains. You just need rules. Both codes were built to restrain power, but in doing so, they created a paradox. They gave powerful institutions a reason to do nothing, and called it virtue. Starfleet won't help a world dying of climate collapse, but it will watch from orbit. The Jedi won't stop a dictator, but they will offer counsel. Inaction becomes a shield. Responsibility, silence. They say, we cannot interfere, but they're already there. Ships in orbit, Jedi in the chambers. The presence alone changes everything. The myth of non-interference was never real. The Jedi never realized their presence legitimized power. Starfleet never saw that restraint, too often, meant indifference. You can't claim neutrality from inside the system, because codes don't remove your impact. They just mask it. When institutions break their own rules, they don't admit it. They justify it. They rewrite the intent, reframe the act, call it necessary. Starfleet created Section 31, an organization that violates the Prime Directive on principle. And the Jedi? They broke their own code to train child soldiers, to lead armies, to serve the Senate. But when individuals defy the code to save lives, they're punished. The institution can break the rules, but the individual cannot. That isn't honor, that's control. Sisko lied to bring the Romulans into the war. It worked, and Starfleet let it happen, because the war turned. But if he had failed, he'd have been disavowed. It's not about morality, it's about deniability. That's the paradox of codes. Break them when you must, but only if you win. Institutions don't just follow the code. They believe in it. They have to. Because if they admitted it failed, they have to admit they failed. And systems don't grieve. They entrench. The Jedi said, "There is no emotion," while Anakin burned. Starfleet said, "We don't interfere," as civilizations collapsed beneath them. They weren't protecting people. They were protecting the lie. The code became the shield, not for the innocent, for the institution. Not everyone who breaks the code is a hero. Some are called traitors, because they are. But not every traitor is wrong. Count Dooku left the Jedi, saw the corruption, tried to stop it, then became the thing he feared. Michael Eddington turned on Starfleet because he saw the code meant that the Federation wouldn't help the border colonies. He didn't want to destroy the Federation, he wanted to resist it. They were wrong, but they weren't lying. They believed in something else. And belief, even dangerous belief, means there was still a part of them that wanted to do good. The final defense of the institution isn't logic. It isn't compassion. It's the shrug. We had no choice. The Jedi hunted children to assimilate them, claimed it was necessary. Starfleet banned synths, claimed it was for safety. They fought against the Maquis because it was easier than owning the mistake. These weren't accidents, they were choices, and they were proud of them. The file is now complete, not for review, not for oversight, but for the record. So history can remember the lie before it becomes the truth. Because codes don't protect people. People do. And when the code becomes more important than the person, we fail. Again, and again, and again.